we're going to move on to the deep dive topic. But somehow I co-founded a digital agency 15 years ago with a bit of a UX master, and I ran that business, or we ran that business for 5 years with today's guest speaker, Sarah Edwards, who is a UX strategy specialist at the top of her game. Sarah's agency, Make It Clear, focuses on clarifying the complex for some of the most renowned brands around. And today she's going to share some of her insights and experiences with you guys. Her talk is titled How to Maximize Conversions with Great UI UX. And well, welcome, Sarah. The stage is yours.
Thanks, Graham. Hello, everybody. Right, I'm going to present. Okay. Perfect. Everyone can see that, I hope. Yeah, great. Okay, well, thanks for having me here today. It's much appreciated. So, hang on, shall we get this? There we go. So Graham gave a bit of an intro, but a little bit about me. I'm doing this quite a long time now. Been lucky to work with some quite amazing clients, both for kind of cultural institutions all the way to sort of technology firms as well. So it's been quite a journey, and it's been good doing it so long. So I've kind of grown up with the internet, really. So when we're progressing from dial-up to AI, you know, lots of different challenges, but some of those principles are still the same. And then Make It Clear, and Graham gave a bit of a short kind of introduction about us. So we work within design, UI, and UX, and research, consultancy. So we have a range of clients. Primarily, we work with technology. So people like Virgin Media, people that have large products and stuff that they need to present digitally. So, and then the agency itself has been doing that for over 20 years, and I've run it for 16 now. So again, long time. And this is a little throwback to the digital agency that me and Graham had back in the day. So this is Time Machine. So this is, I think, about 10 years ago. So Make It Clear had a partner agency, Make It Digital, and that's the agency that we ran together. And a bit of a shout out to Kat, who we've also worked together, and Rob, we've worked on many projects as well. So just for a bit of context. And Esme, who's on my team at the moment, who's helping me with social. So she's just here to keep me on track, really. Yeah. Okay, so firstly, I'd like to start with why we should care about good UX. Because if we don't care about good UX, it's going to lose us money. So improving those customer journeys has that potential to increase that satisfaction by at least 20% and lift revenue. I mean, it's really important to think about all of our journeys and how we can optimize them, because at the end of the day, the bottom line is it's going to either lose money or make more money. And second fact to put in here is around things like mobile optimization. So 64% of all online retail traffic comes from mobile, and yet conversion rates on mobile are only half of that on desktop. I think this is quite an old statistic, and the ways in which payments and stuff is being handled on mobile now is so much more efficient that we are really kind of catching up. But it's really important to be thinking about UX and streamlining those journeys. Going to start with a little quiz. So which one of these two designs do you think drove more conversions, A or B? I don't know if you want to put some stuff in the chat. Maybe you can test if people are listening to me. Cool. Oh, interesting. Okay, so you guys have mostly gone A. I don't know if that might be a little bit of groupthink, but it's actually the one without the icons that's the most efficient. Principle here is removing clutter from interfaces. So we want to kind of remove any barriers, and I think I'll talk about this point in a little bit more detail later, remove any barriers to the user actually getting to where they want to. And in an A/B test, they found that second one, the B, was a lot more efficient at doing that. Okay, don't worry, there's one more chance. Okay, so with this form, do you think A or B work better, converted more users? No one wants to put anything in the chat now, do they? Okay. Thanks, Dave. Okay, so this is potentially a little bit of a trick question, because it is really good to put things like badges and credibility badges onto forms, but in this instance, it isn't a transaction, it's a gathering of information. So the wrong trust logo is placed in the wrong place, and that's eroding that trust. So in this case, the answer was actually B. But anyway, it just talks to some principles we'll talk a little bit more about later. And here's a meme that's a bit old, so I'm sure you guys have potentially seen this before. And this just really indicates what the difference between design and user experience is. We've all got an idea of that ideal path, literally, of where we want our users to go, but they will find the quickest way. They will find the way that works for them. So I think this illustrates it quite well. And I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail. I'm not going to read out everything on this screen, but I think when we're thinking about what the differences are between UX and UI, this kind of illustrates some of the disciplines behind that. So we think about UX as the research, the structure, the underpinning elements which will inform a finalized design, and we think about UI as the look and feel, the way that your brand kind of comes to life. So there's lots of different ways that that's then executed. I think the principle I like to talk about here is that if you talk to a UX or UI designer, UX designers are like, oh, UX is most important. It really is, you know, kind of where it's at, and I believe that. But within UI, within how your brand communicates, that's your chance to add that bit of magic, add that little piece of personalization, that lovely little cute animation which brings your brand to life. We've been doing, you know, UX is quite an old discipline now. Over the last 10 years, so much user testing has happened. We as an agency, as a industry, are quite confident what works because we've tested on so many users. So there is a chance, there's a danger that these days that all the journeys that we're doing online and all the different devices become so similar, so boring that I think it's thinking about how your look and feel really kind of excels, and your opportunities to delight your customer is so important these days. Right, okay, so I'm going to just go through a couple of projects that we've done just to give you an idea of the breadth of UX UI before I kind of nail into the key points. So this is some work that we did with Orange, the mobile phone manufacturer. They wanted to market mobile phones to specific segments. So, for example, older people, teens, people that were like early adopters of technology. So to do that in the most cost-effective way, we did something called a design sprint, which is a methodology within UX, and it's where we look to test a principle within 7 days. So this is kind of how it's broken down. Initially, we start by talking to actual target audience, talking to users, and that's done within focus groups and individual interviews. That's a whole day's worth of research. We analyze that research, we come up with solutions within the internal team, we prototype those concepts, and then we go back to those original users and we look to validate that, and then we report on it. So I think often people think that a UX process, a research process, it's going to be 6 months of work, it's going to be long, it's going to be hundreds of thousands of pounds, but there are techniques that we can use to get real actionable insight within quite a short span of time. And here's some of the lovely focus groups. There's lovely labs you can hire out where you've got two-way kind of, you're recording it. I think this is cool because you can get the client to dial in. They don't have to be in the room, but they can dial in and still watch the focus groups. And these are some of the prototypes that we developed within 2 days. And then we were showing those to the users. So for Cambridge University Press and Assessment, we do a variety of UX and UI support areas, but primarily we work on digital foundations, so UX principles and digital brand foundations that then roll out to all of their digital platforms. So things like learning management systems, marketing sites, huge amounts of international websites, platforms and apps. These are examples of user personas, which I'm sure you guys are aware of. I think when Graham was talking about personalization earlier, I think a key point around personalization is personalizing for who, and the importance of really understanding who you're trying to target and how you're trying to target and how you're talking to them. So we use user personas as a tool to understand who our target audiences are. So they've blurred out some of the information because it's a bit confidential. And here's another one. This is for educational reform, which is a department within the press that work with international governments. And another thing that we do quite a lot is wireframing. So wireframing is a structural representation of how we want a platform to look. And we often build that out into a prototype, which would then be user tested and then becomes the fully fledged branded kind of piece. Couple more quick examples. So Avantra is an SAP monitoring platform. For them, it's very data orientated. So within the work we did for them, we produced light, dark versions of the interfaces, really focusing on color as an indicator of things that were going wrong or things that were okay. And some more screens. This is sort of a style guide. So kind of moving into like a design system structure. So when we build components out like this, it allows us to build new pages quickly because we've got component sets, and I'm sure you guys are working with pieces like this. Last one, interesting project we did last year. So was working with the Ministry of Defence. So this platform allowed them to input data about airports from across the world. It's all about kind of where you can fly, so where the no-fly zones are. So it's really, really critical. So we went to RAF Norfolk and we interviewed serving officers around how they were using the existing platform, what was working, what didn't. And then from that, we developed these interfaces, prototypes, and the design system kind of principles that would then be implemented to reinvent that platform. Okay, here's some icons. Oh, sorry, there is one more I should remember. So Layer. So this is an AI product that we built with another development team. Do go and take a look. So it allows you with 2 questions to define UX principles for your website. So it will come up with user personas, it will come up with a website structure, it will come up with ideas for content. So quite similar to what Graham was talking about earlier, we built in the background prompts to help kind of shape and define the areas and how the system should play back things like example user personas, color, styling, content, messaging, and it also suggests what social platforms you should be on. It uses ChatGPT for this. Some more icons. Okay, so back to probably the title of the talk. Okay, so we've come up with, I think it's about 6 principles for higher conversion. So we're just going to sort of talk over those, and then we can do a bit of a Q&A at the end. So the first principle was really around clarity and simplicity. So it kind of talks back to that icon piece, how we want to be keeping interfaces clean, minimal, as easy to understand as possible. Too cluttered layouts, they're too confusing. It's a cognitive overload for the user. We want them to be able to understand what they're seeing and what we want them to do very quickly when we look at a site or a platform or an app. Couple of more practical tips. So don't use too many fonts. I mean, stick to an absolute maximum of 3, ideally 2, and make sure that you've got a clear hierarchy of font weighting. So you want the user to, at a glance, to understand what's the most important information on that page. Making your calls to action really prominent, and also understanding who your user is, which talks back to the user persona point, and talking to them in a language that they understand. Navigation is around the second point. It's about guiding your users with clear menu structures and breadcrumb and a logical flow. A pitfall here is trying to reinvent the wheel around navigation. People are using digital interfaces every day, all day, and they have a map in their heads of how typically you should navigate. And if you move too far away from that, you're in danger of losing your users before you get to the point that you need them to convert. So think about pulling things in that are things like breadcrumbs, logical flows. Also think about how you're ordering how you're structuring and ordering your navigation, both in terms of the terminology you're using, ensure that's terminology that's relevant to your user base, and also how you're grouping that information. So you can use a technique called card sorting to reflow, to define a navigation structure. You can do that in an open format or a closed format. So essentially, what you do is you write the names of all the pages, all the sections of your website or your app or your platform onto cards, and you scatter them on the table, and you try and get a couple of your target users in the room, and you ask them to group those into logical flows. In open card sort, they do that by themselves and they give the names to the groups. But in a closed card sort, you give them the groups, you just ask them which bucket they should be in. It's never what you expect. It always comes up with something that you may have not predicted, and it's basically free to do as well. So it's a really good exercise if you can get some of your users in the room. So the next piece is around speed and performance. So, I mean, a lot of this is down to the Grahams and Robs of this world and their lovely clean code that's going to work really, really fast. But when we're thinking about design, it's also really important to think about how bloated our page is. Are we using, huge background videos that kind of layer the background? Really popular now. I mean, it gives you a lovely idea of what that open plan office is looking like, but it's massive. It takes a while to download. It doesn't really work well on mobile. And it's not very good if you're thinking about accessibility. When we're thinking around neurodiversity, it's a lot going on for people to process and understand if you're presented immediately with a moving image. So think about how you're using those elements. Also look at how you're optimizing your images, your animations as well, just to make sure that you get your quickest speed time. What else? Yes, a fact I've dug out, which was Amazon found that every 100 millisecond delay costs 1% in sales. So if your website's taking you a few seconds to download to appear, it's too long. People will go somewhere else. And then the other point around this is understanding where your users are going to be accessing your site or your content or your app. Like, is that going to be on a train on the way to work? Because in that case, you want to be really, really speedy with your load times. If they are going to be in a nice laptop in like a high Wi-Fi area, then it's probably okay to use more graphic elements. So have a think about where your site's being used. Effective CTAs, making CTAs clear, visible, and action orientated. It's really important that people understand what the intent is with the call to action, using that clear language. So read more is always one we get thrown out that people hate. So is it sign up? Is it register now? What's actually going to happen when the user clicks that button? Position them prominently. We talk about the fold. Sometimes it's less of an issue these days, but the fold is basically where the user will see the bottom of the screen. So ideally you want to kind of have those prominent CTAs above the screen, so that kind of get in touch, that buy now, that find out more. And there's also techniques that we can use to present those CTAs at different points. So for example, if they might have dwelled for a couple of seconds without any activity, we can present a prop-up. And there's things that you can do if you're scrolling, say, to look, if it looks like you're going to move away from the screen and you're scrolling up, you can trigger another pop-up as well. And perhaps you want to kind of look at a secondary message there. there's pieces around creating that sense of urgency or exclusivity as well. Limited time offers, join now. You know, it's something that hotel booking sites are a bit scrupulous at. You know, it's sometimes called a dark pattern when you're like, you know, 100 people have looked at this page and booked in the last hour. It kind of panics you into buying, but it works. That's why they use it. Okay, and the other thing is just ensuring messaging is consistent throughout the funnel. So plotting out, right, if they did sign up, what's that registration email they receive? And then when they log in, making sure the language is consistent and they're taken through it step by step. Okay, so mobile responsiveness. And I hate saying mobile responsiveness because it's not really mobile responsiveness anymore. Is it because we have mobiles the size of tablets, tablets the size of mobiles, watches? We have so many devices, right? But we have to understand kind of typically what do you expect your users to be using your site on, and making sure that you're testing and designing for that. A point about app or no app, you know, maybe 5-10 years ago, everybody wanted an app, but you know, these days it's like, well, why do you want an app? You know, if you need a highly secure environment, like it's some financial services, or if you're looking to pull from functionality of the device, so for example the camera, then yes, absolutely do have a supporting app. But you know, responsive sites and stuff are doing a really good job these days. So and then think about things like button sizes. So you want to be, your tap sizes need to be slightly larger. I think the baseline is 44 pixels by 44, because think about how the thumb is being used. Simplifying the navigation, so people are used to things like burger navs that appear at the top of the screen, but your navigation will need to differ from your desktop navigation. And then also just regularly testing on all the devices just to make sure things are working as you expect. So the last point, second to last point, it's just around trust signals and that social proof. So we looked before at that, how including that badge immediately made it look like that form had more kind of authority, although it was slight trick question with that one. But it is a really important point around including things like reviews, trust badges, things like payment security. Pitfalls here around not including social proof or kind of outdated testimonials. It's easy to get some custom quotes in, hopefully, and sort of display those, but make sure they're nice and relevant. Video testimonials are also really impactful. You can share them on, I'm sure Graham will share his new YouTube channel, but like, you know, a lot of our clients will commission us to do case study projects because it is very effective. Looking at including some guarantees as well, like secure checkout or money back guarantee. I mean, that help, I think, can increase conversion rates. A point about reviews. So there's lots of platforms out there that will, I'm sure you guys are more than aware of that, Trustpilot, Yelp. You know, Google reviews is something that's free, so it's definitely worth reaching out and seeing if you can kind of boost any kind of Google reviews there. We use Clutch, which I think is free for the platform that we use, but we pull in some of those reviews and their rating for us in the website as well, and it does help. Okay, so the importance of testing. So last point, because it's so important, but just keep testing, keep asking those questions. Don't make those assumptions that you understand your user base completely. You might be a typical user, but there's plenty more out there. So there's things that you can put in place, like short micro surveys. There's obviously things like Google Analytics that can be used to measure things like bounce rates, session duration, and any funnel drop-off points as well. It's also worth talking to your users. So if you have to do a usability test, potentially you're testing some new functionality. You know, we find you can do that with 6 participants, and you can gather enough themes from those 6 participants to inform that kind of decision making. And also consider things like heat maps, session recordings, eye tracking, Hotjar, Crazy Egg. There's lots of different platforms out there that can help you kind of gather that, so you don't have to rely on those assumptions. for your decision making, and also revert back to your personas that you created at the start of the document, and do make sure you're updating those regularly. That's it. Yeah.
Thank you, Sarah. Amazing. It's a lot of ground we've covered there.
Yes, sorry, I could probably have talked for about 4 hours on it. There's so much you can kind of chat about. I try to keep it to the points.
Let's open it up for questions.